There are specialized cells that make up the nervous system. Neurons or nerve cells, they're tiny discrete information processing units that receive inputs from other cells, integrate those inputs, and then distribute the processed information to other neurons. Glial cells provide support and also contribute to information processing. Know more about the neurons than glial cells because neurons do most of the work in the brain and produce readily measured electrical signals. Advancements in microscopy allowed for 19th century neuroanatomists to visualize cells of the brain with high resolution. Camillo Golgi was an Italian neuroscientist, and he thought neurons were continuous with one another, forming a nearly endless network of connected tubes through which information flowed. Santiago Ramon Cajal, a Spanish neuroscientist, developed a convincing alternative to Golgi's theory and argued that at each point of contact between neurons, a tiny gap keeps the cells separate. The neuron doctrine, which came about by Cajal's studies, proposed that 1. The cells of the brain are independent from one another structurally, metabolically, and functionally, and 2. Information is transmitted from one neuron to the next across tiny gaps. Sir Charles Sherrington later demonstrated the existence and function of these gaps and named the gaps synapses. The neuron has 4 structural divisions specialized for information processing: the mitochondria, the cell nucleus, the ribosomes. These are all parts of the cell. Unique components to the neuron allow it to collect input signals from other sources, process and combine this information, and distribute the results of the processing to other cells by means of its own electrochemical output signals. The 4 distinct functional zones found in almost all neurons, despite wide variation in shape, are the input zone, where neurons collect and integrate information either from the environment or from other cells; the integration zone, where the decision to produce a neural signal is made; the conduction zone, where information can be transmitted over great distances; the output zone, where the neuron transfers information to other cells. Neurons can be classified by shape, size, or function. Multipolar neurons have many dendrites, one single axon, and they're the most common type of neurons. Bipolar neurons have a single dendrite at one end of the cell, a single axon at the other end, and they're especially common in sensory systems like vision. Unipolar neurons or monopolar neurons have a single extension, usually thought of as an axon that branches in 2 directions after leaving the cell body. One end is the input zone with branches like dendrites, the other end is the output zone. Such cells transmit touch information from the body into the spinal cord. Motor neurons, sensory neurons, and interneurons are some of the many forms of neurons in the body. Larger neurons have more complex outputs and inputs, cover greater distances, and convey information more rapidly than smaller neurons. Information is received through synapses. Arborization is the elaborate branching of the dendrites of some neurons. Presynaptic refers to the region of the synapse that releases a neurotransmitter, and postsynaptic refers to the region of the synapse that receives and responds to a neurotransmitter. A synapse has 3 principal components. First is presynaptic membrane on the axon terminal of the presynaptic neuron. Second is the synaptic cleft, a gap of about 20 to 40 nanometers that separates the presynaptic and postsynaptic neurons. And thirdly, the postsynaptic membrane, which is on the surface of the dendrite or cell body of the postsynaptic neuron. Neurotransmitters are in each vesicle, each synaptic vesicle, and they are molecules of a specialized chemical substance. These vesicles fuse with the presynaptic membrane and rupture, releasing the neurotransmitter molecules into the cleft and respond in response to electrical activity. Neuroplasticity is the ability of the nervous system to change in response to experience or the environment. Configuration of synapses on a neuron's dendrites and cell body is constantly changing. continual remodeling of the connections between neurons. The axon integrates and then transmits the information. The axon hillock, or little hill, is a cone-shaped projection of the cell body. It gathers and integrates information from all the synapses on the neuron's dendrites and soma, and then converts the processed information into a code of electrical impulses that carries the neuron's messages down the axon towards its target impulses that carry the neuron. Towards its targets. Okay. The axon beyond the hillock is tubular with ranging diameter. Usually neurons only have one axon, which often divides into several axon collaterals, allowing the neuron to influence or innervate a number of postsynaptic cells. Movement of material is called axonal transport, and it works in both directions. Anterograde transport moves material towards the axon terminals, and retrograde transport moves used materials back to the cell body for recycling. Some materials are moved at a slow rate inside the axon, and some are moved by a fast system, which is the rapid transmission of electrical signals along the outside of the axon. Glial cells support and enhance neural activity. Actually, just kidding, I don't have to do that. So that is all for my section 1 outline for chapter 2 of behavioral neuroscience.